The sky above Seoul was unusually clear that morning, a rare break from the city's perpetual haze. People bustled through streets lined with neon signs and towering buildings, their lives moving forward in the predictable rhythm of work, school, and errands. No one noticed a faint shimmer in the air until it grew brighter, almost blinding. Then came the sound, a low hum that seemed to vibrate through bones rather than ears. Heads turned upward as a massive object descended from the heavens. It wasn't just one ship, but dozens, sleek and silver like polished mirrors reflecting the sun. They hovered silently over major cities across the globe, their presence impossible to ignore. In Seoul, crowds gathered in awe and confusion, pointing at the sky while news helicopters circled above. The ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, their surfaces smooth and unmarked, lacking any visible engines or weapons. For hours, there was no communication. Governments scrambled to respond, military forces placed on high alert, and conspiracy theories spread faster than wildfire online. Then, without warning, every screen, televisions, phones, billboards lit up with the same image. It was an alien face, its features sharp yet elegant, framed by glowing patterns etched into its skin. Its voice echoed in perfect English, calm and measured. "We are the Caliph," it said. "We come not as conquerors, but as saviors. Your species teeters on the brink of self-destruction. War, pollution, greed. These things will bring about your end unless we intervene. We offer guidance, technology, and order. Resist us, and you will only hasten your doom." The message repeated itself in multiple languages, ensuring no one missed its meaning. Some people cheered, believing salvation had arrived. Others screamed in protest, accusing the aliens of lies and manipulation. Chaos erupted in some areas, with riots breaking out in crowded squares. But many simply stood still, frozen by shock or disbelief. Jin-ho watched the broadcast from his cramped apartment, cigarette smoke curling around him like a toxic halo. A journalist for a small independent paper, he had spent years exposing corruption and injustice in Korea. He didn't trust governments, corporations, or anyone claiming to have all the answers. And now, here were beings from another world making promises too grand to believe. "This is propaganda," Jin-ho muttered to himself, stubbing out a cigarette. "They're selling fear wrapped in hope." He grabbed his notebook and pen, already jotting down ideas for his next article. If the rest of the media fell for this act, someone needed to call it out. Across town, Hyman sat in her lab, staring at monitors displaying data streams linked to the alien ships. As part of a government initiative to study extraterrestrial phenomena, she had been called in immediately after the Kalita's arrival. Her colleagues buzzed with excitement, marveling at the advanced technology they couldn't begin to understand. But Hyman felt uneasy. She had always dreamed of meeting intelligent life beyond Earth, but this felt wrong. Too sudden, too perfect. "They claim they want to help us," she whispered to herself, tapping her fingers against the desk. "But why now? Why wait until we're on the edge of destruction?" Her thoughts were interrupted by her supervisor, Dr. Park, who entered the room carrying a tablet filled with new instructions. "Hi, Min," he said briskly. "The Caliph have requested our cooperation. They want scientists to assist them in implementing their plans. You've been selected." Hi Min blinked, caught off guard. "What kind of plans?" Dr. Park hesitated, then sighed. "Resource management, environmental restoration, population control, everything. They say they can fix what we've broken, but only if we follow their lead." She nodded slowly, masking her unease behind a polite smile. "I'll do my best." Far away from the chaos of Seoul, Dae-sung leaned against a wooden fence surrounding his farm, watching clouds drift lazily across the horizon. News of the Kalita's arrival reached him late, carried by neighbors eager to share gossip. At first, he dismissed it as nonsense. Aliens? Really? But when he saw footage of the ships on his old television set, doubt crept into his mind. Dae-sung wasn't a man prone to panic. Years of serving in the military during tense conflicts had taught him patience and resilience. After retiring, he chose a quiet life tending crops and raising livestock, far removed from politics and power struggles. Yet even he couldn't ignore the implications of what was happening. Something big was coming, and it wouldn't stop at borders or oceans. Over the next few days, reports poured in about the Calith's actions. They dismantled nuclear arsenals, shut down polluting factories, and redistributed food supplies to starving regions. Crowds cheered in gratitude, hailing them as heroes. But Daesung noticed something unsettling. Neighbors who once argued passionately about farming techniques or local elections now spoke softly, almost mechanically. Conversations lacked emotion. Debates disappeared entirely. It was as though everyone had accepted the Calith's authority, without question. One evening, Daesung visited his closest friend, young June, whose family owned a nearby orchard. Over cups of green tea, they discussed recent events. "It's strange," young June admitted, scratching his chin. "People seem content, like they don't care anymore. Or like they're afraid to care," Daesung replied, his brow furrowed. "You notice how quiet everyone's gotten? Even the kids." Young June shrugged. "Maybe it's for the best. Look at what they've done already. Clean water, free electricity, no more wars. Isn't that worth a little silence?" Daesung didn't answer. He couldn't shake the feeling that something darker lurked beneath the surface. The Caliph weren't gods, they were invaders. Whatever they offered, it came at a cost, and sooner or later, humanity would pay. Back in Seoul, Jinho published his latest article under the headline "Alien Saviors or Silent Tyrants?" His words were sharp and incisive, questioning the Calith's motives and warning readers not to blindly trust them. For a brief moment, the piece gained traction, sparking heated debates online. But within hours, the conversation died down. Social media platforms began censoring posts critical of the Caliph, labeling them as misinformation. Major newspapers refused to print opposing viewpoints, citing public safety concerns. Frustrated but undeterred, Jinho decided to dig deeper. He started reaching out to sources, scientists, politicians, ordinary citizens, hoping to uncover evidence of the Calith's true intentions. One name kept coming up: Min. Rumors suggested she was working closely with the aliens, privy to secrets others could only guess at. Determined to speak with her, Jinho tracked down her contact information and sent a carefully worded email. Meanwhile, Min found herself increasingly conflicted. Each day brought new revelations about the Calith's capabilities and their demands. They pushed for drastic changes, forcing humans to abandon long-held traditions and practices. Resistance was met with swift punishment. Dissenters vanished overnight, never to be seen again. Despite her growing unease, Min continued her work, clinging to the hope that she might find a way to turn the situation around. Late one night, as she reviewed data in her lab, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Jinho. His message was brief but compelling. "If you know something, tell me. Humanity deserves the truth." Min stared at the screen, heart pounding. Could she trust him? More importantly, could she risk betraying the Caliph? As dawn broke over the countryside, Daesung rose early to tend his animals. The world outside his farm remained eerily quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against the ears. He knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, the Caliph would come for him too. When they did, he vowed to be ready. For now, though, all he could do was wait and watch. Months had passed since the Caliph's arrival, and their presence was now an undeniable part of everyday life. The sleek silver ships that once hovered ominously in the skies were now permanent fixtures above major cities, casting faint shadows over bustling streets. People went about their routines as if nothing unusual had happened, though subtle changes lingered beneath the surface. Streets were cleaner, traffic flowed smoother, and crime rates plummeted to almost zero. Governments no longer argued or fought. Instead, they followed orders handed down by the Caliph administrators. At first glance, it seemed like a utopia. Hunger vanished as food distribution became efficient and fair. Energy shortages ended thanks to advanced alien technology that powered entire cities without pollution. War ceased entirely, replaced by enforced peace agreements monitored by the Caliph. But for those who paid attention, something darker simmered underneath this new world order. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was silence. Jinho sat at his desk, staring blankly at the glowing screen of his laptop. His articles had grown fewer and farther between, not because he lacked things to say, but because no one wanted to hear them. Newspapers folded under pressure from the Caliph, their editors either silenced or replaced. Social media platforms disappeared entirely, replaced by a single global network controlled by the aliens. Every post, every comment, was filtered and censored before it reached the public eye. He lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke slowly as he thought about his last attempt to publish an exposé. The article had been titled, "The Cost of Compliance," detailing how the Caliph manipulated human leaders into surrendering control. Within hours of hitting send, Jinho received a visit from men in black suits claiming to represent the Global Unity Council, a puppet organization created by the Caliph. They didn't threaten him directly, but made it clear that continuing down this path would have consequences. "What do you want me to do?" Jinho had asked bitterly. "Pretend everything is fine?" The man smiled thinly. "We're offering humanity salvation. Why fight it?" Now, weeks later, Jinho felt trapped. He couldn't ignore what was happening, yet speaking out only pushed him further into isolation. Most people seemed content, or perhaps too afraid, to question the Caliph. Even his closest friends avoided discussing politics, steering conversations towards safer topics like sports or weather. The silence was suffocating. Across town, Hyman worked tirelessly in her lab, surrounded by glowing screens and humming machines. She spent long hours analyzing data provided by the Caliph, tried to understand how their technology functioned. At first, she believed she could learn enough to expose their secrets, but the more she studied, the more complicated it became. Their systems operated on principles beyond human comprehension, relying on energy sources and mathematics that defied logic. Hyman also noticed something else during her research: patterns embedded within the Caliph's signals. These weren't random fluctuations, but deliberate sequences targeting specific brainwave frequencies. At first, she dismissed it as coincidence. But when she cross-referenced the data with psychological studies, a chilling realization dawned on her. The Caliph weren't merely governing humanity. They were rewiring minds. "They're suppressing emotions," she whispered to herself late one night, staring at graphs depicting neural activity. Anger, frustration, rebellion, all suppressed. Even joy and creativity showed signs of decline. Humans were becoming docile, compliant drones. She knew she had to act, but whom could she trust? Her colleagues were either oblivious or complicit, eager to please their alien overlords. Reaching out to anyone outside the lab risked drawing attention. Then she remembered Jinho's email. His words echoed in her mind. "If you know something, tell me. Humanity deserves the truth." Taking a deep breath, Hyman composed a reply. She kept it vague, careful not to reveal too much. "Meet me tomorrow evening at Myeongdong Station. Come alone." Meanwhile, in the countryside, Dae-sung observed the changes spreading through his small community. Neighbors who once gathered for lively chats after work now stayed indoors, avoiding contact altogether. Conversations dwindled to polite nods and short greetings. Even children played quietly, their laughter muted compared to before. It was as though the Caliph's influence extended far beyond urban centers, seeping into rural areas where technology barely existed. One afternoon, Dae-sung visited Young-jun again, hoping to find answers. But when he arrived at the orchard, he found his friend sitting alone on the porch, staring blankly into space. Gone was the warmth and humor Dae-sung remembered. Instead, Young-jun spoke in monotone, reciting facts about crop yields and irrigation schedules as if reading from a script. "Young-jun," Dae-sung said gently, "are you okay?" Young-jun blinked, then nodded. "I'm fine. Everything is fine." Dae-sung frowned. "No, it's not. Something's wrong here. Can't you see it?" For a moment, Young-jun hesitated, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. Then his expression smoothed over, back to its emotionless state. "There's nothing wrong. We should be grateful. The Caliph are helping us." Frustrated, Dae-sung left without another word. He couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening to his neighbors would soon reach him too. Living off-grid might have shielded him so far, but how long could he stay hidden? That night, unable to sleep, Dae-sung wandered outside to check on his animals. As he walked past the barn, he noticed something strange, a faint glow emanating from the nearby forest. Curious, he grabbed a flashlight and followed the light, heart pounding with anticipation. Deep among the trees, he stumbled upon a device unlike anything he'd ever seen. Small and metallic, it pulsed with soft blue light, emitting a low hum similar to the one heard during the Kalita's arrival. Dae-sung knelt beside it, inspecting it cautiously. Whatever it was, it didn't belong there. He snapped a photo with his phone, intending to investigate further. But as he stood up, a sudden wave of dizziness hit him. His vision blurred, and for a split second, he felt an overwhelming urge to forget what he'd seen. Shaking his head, he forced himself to focus. This wasn't paranoia, it was proof. The next day, Jinho arrived at Myeongdong Station, scanning the crowded platform nervously. He spotted Hai-min immediately, her face pale and drawn. She motioned for him to follow her into a quiet corner away from prying eyes. "I don't have much time," she said quickly, glancing around. "What I'm about to tell you is dangerous, for both of us." Jinho nodded, pulling out his notebook. "Go ahead." Hai-min explained everything: the suppressed emotions, the neural patterns, the gradual erasure of free will. She described the Kalita's true goal: to transform humanity into obedient subjects incapable of resistance. By the time she finished, Jinho's hands trembled with rage. "We can't let them get away with this," he said firmly. "People need to know." Hai-min shook her head. "It's not that simple. If we expose them, they'll retaliate. And right now, we're outnumbered and outmatched. Then what do you suggest?" Jinho demanded. "There might be someone who can help," Hai-min replied. "Someone outside their reach. His name is Dae-sung." Later that week, Jinho traveled to the countryside, guided by Hai-min's instructions. When he finally met Dae-sung, he found a man hardened by years of hardship, yet fiercely determined. Together, they devised a plan. Using encrypted messages and old radio frequencies, they would spread the truth about the Kalita's manipulation. It was risky, but it was their only chance. As autumn leaves swirled in the wind, Dae-sung stood on a hill overlooking his farm, gazing at the horizon. The battle ahead wouldn't be easy, but he refused to give up. Humanity's anger may have faded, but its spirit still burned bright. End of document. Years had passed since the Kalita took control of Earth, and their influence was now absolute. The world they shaped was orderly, efficient, and eerily quiet. Streets once filled with laughter, arguments, and music were now dominated by the hum of automated machines and the soft footsteps of compliant citizens. People moved through life like shadows, their faces blank, their voices rarely raised above a whisper. Even children, who should have been full of curiosity and energy, played in silence, their imaginations dulled. Jinho sat alone in a dimly lit room, his laptop screen casting faint blue light across his weary face. His articles had long since disappeared from public view, buried under layers of censorship and propaganda. Yet he refused to give up. Every night, he worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of information sent to him by Hai-min and Dae-sung. Together, they formed a fragile network of resistance, united by a shared goal: to expose the Kalita's true intentions. Hai-min's discoveries had been invaluable. She spent her days pretending to cooperate with the aliens while secretly gathering evidence of their manipulation. Her lab was a treasure trove of encrypted files, diagrams, and recordings that reveal how the Kalita suppressed human emotions. But even she couldn't stay hidden forever. Suspicion loomed over her as administrators began asking questions about irregularities in her reports. She knew it was only a matter of time before they uncovered her betrayal. One evening, after another long day of research, Hai-min received a message from Jinho. It was short and urgent. "We need proof. Something undeniable." She understood what he meant. Data and theories weren't enough. They needed something tangible, something that could shock humanity out of its complacency. Her opportunity came sooner than expected. A high-ranking Kalita official visited her lab, requesting updates on a project involving neural wave modulation. As she presented her findings, Hai-min noticed a device sitting on the table, a small metallic sphere pulsing with faint blue light. It looked familiar, almost identical to the one Dae-sung had found in the forest. When the official left momentarily, she seized her chance. Grabbing the sphere, she slipped it into her bag, heart pounding with both fear and determination. Later that night, Hyman analyzed the device carefully. Its design was intricate, far beyond anything humans could create. Inside, she discovered microchips emitting frequencies that matched the patterns she'd seen in brainwave scans. This was it, the smoking gun they needed. With trembling hands, she recorded every detail, encrypting the data onto a secure drive. Then, risking everything, she sent the file to Jin-ho. Dae-sung, meanwhile, continued his solitary fight against the creeping silence. Living off-grid had protected him from the Kalatha's mind-altering signals, but he wasn't immune to the changes happening around him. Neighbors stopped visiting altogether, their homes growing darker each night. Markets emptied as people abandoned traditional ways of life, relying instead on the Kalatha's automated systems. Even young June, once his closest friend, became little more than a shell of his former self. Despite the isolation, Dae-sung remained resolute. He used his farm as a base of operations, converting old equipment into tools for communication. Using radio scavenged from nearby towns, he broadcast encrypted messages to anyone still capable of independent thought. At first, responses were rare, just static or faint whispers, but gradually, others began reaching out. Farmers, hermits, and isolated communities joined his cause, forming a loose coalition of rebels determined to reclaim their humanity. One day, while repairing a broken transmitter, Dae-sung intercepted a strange signal. Unlike the usual broadcast praising the Caliph, this one carried a distorted voice repeating the same phrase over and over. Search the skies, search the skies. Intrigued, he traced the source to an abandoned observatory on a distant mountain. Gathering supplies, he set out on foot, traveling through dense forests and rocky paths. Along the way, he encountered others drawn by the same signal. Young men and women carrying makeshift weapons, their eyes burning with defiance. When they reached the observatory, they found it guarded by robotic enforcers patrolling the perimeter. Working together, the group disabled the machines using tactics born of necessity rather than training. Inside, they discovered stacks of dusty files and outdated computers. Among them was a single functioning monitor displaying satellite images of Earth overlaid with glowing grids. The grids corresponded to locations where the Kalatha's transmitters were strongest. This is how they're doing it, Dae-sung said, pointing to the screen. These towers are controlling us. The discovery reignited hope among the rebels. If they could destroy the transmitters, they might break the Kalatha's hold on humanity. But such an act would require coordination, resources, and courage, qualities in short supply in a world stripped of passion. Back in Seoul, Jin-ho worked feverishly to piece together the puzzle. Min's data confirmed his worst fears. The Caliph weren't just governing humanity, they were erasing it. Each suppressed emotion, each stifled thought, pushed humanity closer to becoming nothing more than obedient puppets. Armed with this knowledge, Jin-ho prepared to release the information to the world. But broadcasting it wouldn't be easy. The Caliph controlled all major networks, leaving only underground channels available. He reached out to Dae-sung, sharing the plan. We need to hit them hard and fast. Jin-ho wrote an encrypted message. Take out one of their towers, and we'll use the chaos to spread the truth. Dae-sung agreed, but warned of the risks. They'll retaliate, he replied. Are you ready for that? I don't have a choice, Jin-ho answered simply. As preparations began, Min faced her greatest challenge yet. Suspicion turned into accusation when a colleague reported her unauthorized experiments to the Caliph administrators. Within hours, armed guards arrived at her lab, demanding access to her files. Thinking quickly, she activated a program designed to wipe her hard drives clean. As alarms blared and lights flashed, she slipped out through a hidden exit, clutching the encrypted drive containing her evidence. Outside, chaos erupted. Automated drones patrolled the streets, searching for her. Min ran, dodging patrols and weaving through alleys until she reached a safe house arranged by Jin-ho. Exhausted but alive, she handed over the drive, knowing it might cost her everything. Days later, the resistance launched its first attack. Under Dae-sung's leadership, a team of rebels infiltrated a remote transmitter site, disabling security systems and planting explosives. The explosion lit up the night sky, sending shockwaves to the surrounding area. For the first time in years, people woke up not physically but mentally. In nearby towns, conversations resumed, emotions stirred, and memories of freedom flickered back to life. The Caliph responded with brutal efficiency. Enforcers descended upon affected regions, restoring order through force. But the damage was done. Seeds of rebellion had been planted, spreading faster than the aliens could contain. In the aftermath, Jinho published his expose, broadcasting across hacked frequencies and smuggled devices. The title read, "They took our voices, but not our spirits." Millions listened, their mind awakening to the truth. Humanity's silence had ended, not with anger, but with resolve. From his hilltop vantage point, Dae-sung watched the horizon glow with renewed hope. The road ahead would be treacherous, but for the first time in years, he felt alive. The battle was far from over, but humanity had taken its first step toward reclaiming itself. The explosion at the transmitter site sent shockwaves rippling across the land, both literally and figuratively. For miles around, people felt the tremor, not just in their bodies but in their minds. The Caliph's control over emotions wavered, if only briefly, allowing suppressed thoughts and feelings to resurface. In villages and towns near the blast zone, conversations erupted spontaneously. Neighbors who hadn't spoken for months exchanged words again, their voices trembling with a mix of fear and relief. Children laughed louder than they had in years, their laughter carrying an unfamiliar note of freedom. Dae-sung stood atop a hill overlooking the smoldering remains of the tower, his face streaked with soot and sweat. Around him, rebels cheered quietly, their victory tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The Caliph wouldn't let such defiance go unpunished. Dae-sung could already hear the distant hum of approaching ships, their sleek forms cutting through the sky like blades. He turned to the group gathered behind him. "We've started something we can't stop," he said firmly. "If you're with me, stay close. If not, leave now while you still can." No one moved. Some nodded silently. Others tightened their grips on makeshift weapons. They were farmers, laborers, hermits, ordinary people pushed to extraordinary limits. None of them had asked for this fight, but all of them understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming humanity's soul. Meanwhile, Jinho worked tirelessly from his hideout in Seoul, broadcasting the truth as far and wide as he could. His expose spread like wildfire, carried by encrypted signals and smuggled devices. People listened in secret, huddled in basements or hidden corners of their homes. Many cried as they realized how much they'd lost, their anger, their joy, their ability to dream. But tears weren't enough. Jinho urged them to act, to rise up against the Caliph before it was too late. "Don't wait for someone else to save you," he wrote in his final broadcast. "This is our planet, our lives. Fight for them." Hai Min watched the broadcast from her safe house, heart pounding with equal parts pride and dread. She knew the cost of exposing the Caliph's secrets would be high, but she never imagined how quickly they would come for her. Within hours of the attack on the transmitter, Caliph enforcers raided every location linked to her. Her lab was destroyed, her colleagues interrogated. She barely escaped capture herself, fleeing deeper into hiding with nothing but the clothes on her back and an encrypted drive containing her evidence. As she moved cautiously through abandoned streets, avoiding patrols and surveillance drones, Hai Min couldn't shake the guilt weighing heavily on her shoulders. How many innocent lives had been endangered because of her actions? Yet, even as doubt gnawed at her resolve, she reminded herself why she'd risked everything. Humanity deserved to know the truth, and more importantly, it deserved a chance to fight back. Back in the countryside, Dae-sung led his growing army of rebels toward another transmitter site. Word of their success had spread, drawing volunteers from nearby areas. Farmers arrived with pitchforks and axes, students with stolen tools and scraps of metal. Each new recruit brought fresh determination, though none could match Dae-sung's quiet intensity. He didn't speak much, letting his actions inspire those around him. When he gave orders, They follow without question, trusting him to guide them through the chaos. Their journey was fraught with danger. The Caliph deployed robotic enforcers to track down anyone attempting to disrupt their operations. These machines were relentless, scanning for heat signatures and movement patterns with cold precision. More than once, Daesung's group narrowly avoided detection, retreating into dense forests or underground tunnels to evade capture. Supplies dwindled, exhaustion set in, but no one complained. They shared food sparingly, slept in shifts, and pressed onward, driven by a single-minded purpose. When they finally reached the second transmitter site, it was heavily guarded. Enforcers patrolled the perimeter, their glowing eyes scanning for intruders. Automated turrets lined the walls, ready to fire at the slightest provocation. Daesung studied the layout carefully, formulating a plan. Speed and surprise would be their greatest weapons. At dusk, the rebels launched their assault. Moving swiftly and silently, they disabled the outer defenses using crude explosives crafted from scavenged materials. Inside, they encountered resistance, both human collaborators and alien technology, but fought back with ferocity born of desperation. Metal clashed against metal, shouts echoed through corridors, and blood stained the floors. It was messy, chaotic, and brutal, but effective. By sunrise, the transmitter lay in ruins. Exhausted but triumphant, the rebels regrouped outside, tending to their wounded and mourning their dead. Daesung surveyed the scene, his expression grim. Victory came at a cost, but it also fueled their momentum. With each destroyed tower, the Caliph's grip weakened and humanity grew stronger. In Seoul, Jinho faced increasing peril. Betrayed by a former ally seeking leniency from the Caliph, his hideout was raided during the night. He barely escaped, slipping through narrow alleys and climbing rooftops to evade capture. Alone and hunted, he relied on coded messages hidden within old radio broadcasts to stay connected with Hymin and Daesung. One evening, as he hid in a crumbling apartment building, Jinho received a message from Hymin. She revealed her location and requested a meeting. Knowing the risks, he agreed, understanding that their collaboration was crucial to keeping the resistance alive. Together, they devised a bold plan to infiltrate the central transmitter facility located in the heart of Seoul. If successful, disabling it would deal a crippling blow to the Caliph's control over humanity. The mission required precision and sacrifice. Hymin volunteered to lead the infiltration team, using her knowledge of the Caliph's systems to bypass security measures. Jinho, meanwhile, coordinated efforts from the shadows, relaying information to Daesung and other rebel groups preparing simultaneous attacks on peripheral sites. Timing was critical. Any delay could result in failure and certain death. On the appointed night, Hymin approached the central facility disguised as a technician. Her heart raced as she navigated checkpoints manned by enforcers, her forward credentials passing scrutiny only moments before alarms sounded elsewhere in the city. Rebel forces had begun their assaults, drawing attention away from her position. Seizing the opportunity, Hymin slipped inside, planning charges strategically throughout the complex. As explosions rocked the building, panic ensued. Enforcers scrambled to contain the breach, but the rebels fought back fiercely, buying Hymin precious time to reach the core transmitter. There, she uploaded a virus designed to corrupt the Caliph's neural wave modulation system, rendering it useless. Alarms blared louder, red lights flashing as the facility began collapsing around her. With seconds to spare, Hymin transmitted a final message to Jinho. "It's done. Get out safely." Then, activating the detonator, she sealed her fate. Outside, Jinho watched the facility crumble, smoke billowing into the night sky. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered her name, vowing to honor her sacrifice. Across the city, people emerged from their homes, awakened fully from the Caliph's spell. Conversations erupted, laughter returned, and anger flared, not toward each other, but toward their oppressors. Though battered and bruised, humanity found its voice again, and this time it roared. The destruction of the central transmitter sent shockwaves through the Caliph's systems, both literal and metaphorical. For years, humanity had been shackled by invisible chains, their minds dulled and emotions suppressed. Now, With the core of the neural wave modulation system obliterated, those chains shattered. Cities erupted in chaos. Not the panicked chaos of riots or fear, but a raw, unbridled surge of emotion. People screamed, cried, laughed, and shouted all at once, overwhelmed by feelings they hadn't experienced in years. The silence that had defined their existence was gone, replaced by a cacophony of voices demanding freedom. Daesung stood on a hill overlooking his hometown, watching as flames consumed what remained of the local Caliph outpost. Enforcers lay scattered across the ground, disabled by rebels armed with crude weapons and sheer determination. It wasn't just his town rising up. Reports came in from every corner of the country and beyond. Humanity had awakened, and it refused to go back to sleep. Yet even amidst the triumph, Daesung felt no joy. He thought of Haimin, whose sacrifice had made this moment possible. Her voice echoed in his mind. We can't let them win. She had given everything to ensure humanity could fight back, and now it was up to him and countless others to carry her torch. Jin-ho wandered through the streets of Seoul, his face streaked with soot and tears. The city he once knew as cold and indifferent now pulsed with life. Strangers embraced, sharing stories of loved ones lost to the Caliph's control. Children played freely, their laughter ringing out like music. Yet beneath the surface, anger simmered. It wasn't directed at each other, but at the invaders who had stolen their autonomy. He reached the remains of the central facility, where smoke still billowed into the sky. Standing among the rubble, Jin-ho whispered Haimin's name one last time before turning away. There was no time for grief. The battle wasn't over yet. The Caliph wouldn't surrender easily, and humanity needed leadership now more than ever. Across the globe, the aliens responded with devastating force. Massive ships descended upon cities, unleashing beams of energy that reduced entire neighborhoods to ash. Enforcers patrolled streets, rounding up anyone suspected of rebellion, but humanity refused to cower. Armed with whatever weapons they could find, rocks, knives, scavenged tools, they fought back with ferocity born of desperation. Every loss fueled their resolve. Every death became a rallying cry. In rural areas, Daesung coordinated attacks on smaller Caliph installations, targeting supply lines and communication hubs. His network of rebels grew daily, drawing in people from all walks of life. Farmers used tractors to block roads. Factory workers sabotaged alien machinery. Teachers organized underground schools to teach children about resistance and resilience. Each act of defiance, no matter how small, chipped away at the Caliph's dominance. One evening, as Daesung prepared for another mission, he received an encrypted message from Jin-ho. It contained coordinates in a single line. This is our chance. Intrigued, Daesung gathered his team and set out under cover darkness. Hours later, they arrived at a remote valley where a massive Caliph ship loomed overhead. Its sleek surface gleamed ominously in the moonlight, surrounded by enforcers and drones. This is their command center, Jin-ho explained when they met near the edge of the forest. If we take it down, we cripple their ability to coordinate. How do you know? Daesung asked, skeptical. I intercepted their transmissions, Jin-ho replied. Haimin's virus didn't just disable the transmitters. It exposed weaknesses in their systems. This ship controls the rest. The plan was risky, bordering on suicidal. They would have to infiltrate heavily guarded territory, plant explosives deep within the structure, and escape before detonation. Failure meant certain death. But none of them hesitated. After everything they'd endured, retreat was unthinkable. Under the cover of night, the rebels moved silently through the valley, avoiding patrols and disabling security systems along the way. Inside the ship, they encountered labyrinthine corridors lined with glowing panels and strange symbols etched into the walls. Alien technology hummed around them, alienating yet awe-inspiring. Progress was slow, measured in cautious steps and held breaths. When they finally reached the core chamber, they found it guarded by a towering Caliph warrior, its sharp features illuminated by pulsating blue light. Weapons raised, the rebels charged forward, fighting with everything they had. Metal clashed against metal, shouts drowned out by the hum of alien machinery. Blood spilled onto the floor, but the humans pressed on, driven by a shared purpose. In the end, it was Daesung who delivered the final blow. With a roar of fury, he drove a makeshift spear into the creature's chest, watching as it collapsed in a shower of sparks. Breathing heavily, he turned to his comrades. "Do it," he ordered, gesturing toward the core. One of the rebels planted the explosives while the others covered him, fending off waves of enforcers pouring into the chamber. As the timer ticked down, they retreated, sprinting through corridors now alive with alarms and flashing lights. Behind them, explosions tore through the ship, sending shockwaves rippling outward. The ground shook violently as the massive vessel began to collapse. Outside, the rebels ducked for cover as debris rained down from the sky. When the dust settled, only scorched earth remained where the ship once stood. Cheers erupted from those who had witnessed the destruction, their voices carrying hope to nearby towns and villages. The victory came at a cost. Many rebels perished in the assault, their bodies buried beneath the wreckage. Among them was Jin-Ho, who stayed behind to ensure the explosives were properly placed. His final words, transmitted moments before detonation, echoed in Dae-sung's ears. "Tell them we're free," with heavy hearts. The survivors regrouped, vowing to honor the fallen by continuing the fight. News of the command center's destruction spread quickly, inspiring renewed resistance across the planet. The Kales retaliated brutally, leveling cities and slaughtering thousands. But humanity refused to yield. What started as isolated acts of defiance blossomed into a global uprising, uniting people of all races, cultures, and backgrounds under a single banner. As dawn broke over the horizon, Dae-sung climbed a hill overlooking the battlefield. Below him, fires burned brightly, casting long shadows across the landscape. The air smelled of smoke and blood, but also of hope. For the first time in years, humanity stood united, not out of fear, but out of love for freedom. He thought of Hai Min and Jin-Ho, whose sacrifices had paved the way for this moment. Though their voices were silenced, their legacies lived on in the hearts of those who fought. Turning to the east, where sunlight painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Dae-sung whispered softly, "We feared your power, but you should have feared our silence." Below him, the roar of humanity rose louder than ever, a testament to the indomitable spirit that no force, alien or otherwise, could extinguish.